UFC Long Island is almost here. I'm going to give you my final picks. We're going to talk about some prop opportunities and we're going to build some lineups. So make sure you watch until the end. You can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. No changes to the card since the beginning of the week. No fights falling out so far, thank God. If you haven't yet, go back to the video earlier in the week. I'm going to have it linked in the top of the description. That's where we took our first look. We break down the card. We go over spots that we like, spots that we don't like. And I have changed my mind on a few spots. I've gained some clarity on a couple of things, and I'm ready to bring it to you, starting with value plays. Our first value play is somebody who's getting a lot of respect, something that we cannot ignore. We have Jung sitting at 7,900. I've changed my mind here for several reasons. First of all, the line has swung heavily for Jung throughout the week. Money is absolutely pouring in on him, and I don't know if it's because MMA Twitter is just steaming up the line because everyone else is, or because they think that Jung actually has the skills to get it done here, and I think he might. There are a few things to like about him this week. He's younger, slightly bigger. I don't think he has the technical striking advantage, but he definitely has more power and better forward pressure, and those things might help make up for the difference in technical skill. And if he wants to wrestle in this fight, I think he can do it effectively because Dustin Jacoby is rocking a measly 58% takedown defense.
That's terrible.
And when you look back at his recent wins over Kennedy and Zejiku or William Knight, these are dominant performances that are more impressive than anything that we've seen from Dustin Jacoby in the UFC. So again, I've changed my mind here, and I hope he wins or else I look like an absolute sheep. But give me the guy who now sits at a -120, -125 on some books, priced down at 7,900 on this slate. Definitely good value here with finishing upside and wrestling in his back pocket. Our next value play is Ricky Simone sitting at 7,800. Now, if you ever wore a wrestling singlet, if you ever had a pair of Asics wrestling shoes, if you ever helped the boys roll up the mat after practice, then you probably love you some Ricky Simone. He's got some of the most active and effective takedowns in all of MMA right now, and I think those takedowns are going to lead him to a decision win over Jack Shore this week. Now, there are a few things at play that are worrying me. First is Jack Shore being an undefeated prospect. If the rounds are close, I could see the judges finding themselves giving it to Jack Shore, and you can call that a conspiracy theory if you want, but if you don't think that Saul D'Amato is taking shots of Howlerhead between fights, you need to wake up. Wake up! Wake up! But if those things don't happen, then I think we see rinse and repeat takedowns from our guy, fan of the show, Ricky Simone this week. What's that? Yeah, I know he's not an actual fan of the show. They don't know that. I can say that. Shut up. You also have to love the scoring on average from Ricky Simone. He's putting up consistently excellent DraftKings scores. Great value down here at 7,800 if he gets the W. Our next value play is getting a little sneaky. The more I look at this fight, the more I think that Jingliang is going to knock this guy out. And it's because I can't shake the reality that Muslim Salikov is old. He's so old that his Tapology picture is literally this. What in the Charlie Chaplin am I looking at right now? And as he's aged, he's gotten slower, his pace has gotten worse. If the Leech can stay on his feet in this matchup, I think that he doubles up Salikov on strikes and knocks him out inside the first 2 rounds. His takedown defense percentage on paper doesn't look great, but he was also being taken down by guys like Jake Matthews, Neil Magny, Hamzat Chimaev. I think we could give him a pass. So I really like the power, I like the output, I like the willingness to brawl, I like the level of competition faced as well on the side of Jingliang when you compare the two. So decent value this week at 7,600. Now for our next value play, I gotta address kind of an oversight on my part from earlier in the week. I talked about how Herbert Burns was stepping in on short notice, but then I realized that he was not. He was actually scheduled to fight on this card. His opponent falls out. Billy Q falls out of the Bill Algeo fight. Now these two fight each other. And now that makes me slightly more confident in Mr. Herbert.
You like popsicles?
I think he's super live here. And like we talked about earlier in the week, I think that Herbert Burns blitzes Bill Algeo in the first round, takes him down, finds a submission. If he doesn't do that, then unfortunately his cardio probably falls off a cliff and he gets pieced up and likely finished in the 3rd round. And I say the 3rd round because Bill Algeo isn't a huge puncher. The guy only has 3 career knockouts. But we know that he's not a big puncher, and Herbert Burns knows that he's not a big puncher, so he might be more willing to close distance a little bit more recklessly if he needs to, because he knows that one shot isn't going to put his lights out. And if you think about it, if he does blitz Algeo, gets him down early, and starts working his jiu-jitsu, he's in his world. He's not going to get as tired as if he was constantly shooting for takedowns, getting them stuffed, and then getting pushed back on the feet. So I still like Burns here, and I don't think that he pulls crazy ownership, and people are going to pull ownership in this range, like make no doubt about it. But I don't think it's going to be ridiculous, and let me kind of go deeper into what I mean. So people are going to need underdogs in their lineup every single time to make the salary work. You can't play a DraftKings lineup and only play favorites. It doesn't work. So a lot of the time, you're going to see that band of ownership be pretty tight, around 25 to 35% for fighters in this range. If you really want to gain serious leverage, then you're going to have to find it in different places. Normally at the very bottom of the salary, when you have big underdogs, if those come through, you're going to get good leverage. Typically, women's MMA goes under-owned more often than not. That's a good way to get leverage, and attacking people in the mid-range who look like they're going to go the distance. We learned that last week with Kennedy and Zejiku, who showed up on the optimal lineup. He was sitting at 8,200, and he didn't really pull all that much ownership. So I say that Burns won't pull crazy ownership, but don't be surprised if the number is north of 20%. And then our last value play, because I changed my mind on one of these underdogs. I don't like him as much anymore, but this guy I still do. I like Matt Schnell at this price. And the reasons why I like Matt Schnell: he's cheap this week, he's got good counter striking, and he's got a big grappling advantage. If this fight hits the mat, he's going to find a submission. And like we talked about earlier in the week, I think club and sub is on the table as well, so I think that if Matt Schnell wins, it's not going to be by decision. And I don't think he is as chinny as he once was, or people thought that he was, and I'm not really all that high on Sumudaerji as it is, so I like Matt Schnell down here. I think he shows up in the optimal lineup with a win, great value. And now we can put these value plays to good use. We're going to start building lineups, but before we do, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. You know how the algorithm works. And now it's time. So we'll start with what your cash game lineup should look like. So I think you got to stack the main event here. These guys could totally end up going to war. It could be 4 rounds. It could be 5 rounds. Stack the main event. It'll make it nice and easy for you. Now this card is a little tricky. These are a lot of close fights. It's not super straightforward as to who you have to pick. So when you balance your salary out, you're going to have to be careful. You know my philosophy. I like to come down here and grab a punt play. I think Matt Schnell is a fantastic punt because you've left 8,900 left over for each fighter, and it makes a lot of things possible for you. When you talk about scoring floor, I think Shane Burgos has one of the best scoring floors on the entire slate. The output is ridiculous, and we talked about the output earlier in the week, and we also talked about how Charles Jourdain might be able to hang with him. But when you look at the size advantage, level of competition, Charles Jourdain, no chance of shooting for a takedown. Shane Burgos doesn't have to worry about it. I think we could see him really open up for north of 200 strikes like he did against Billy Quarantillo, and score a whole lot of points in the process. Just like his last time out, he's priced at 9,000, and if he puts up 119 DraftKings points, he's going to be on the optimal lineup. We're going to use him in tournament lineups later, but for cash, I think he makes a ton of sense because even if he loses, he probably scores a decent amount of points. Next, I would like to go with Misha Tate. Listen, I don't think she's going to be super highly owned in tournaments, but I don't think she's going to be super highly owned in cash. And I know in cash, ownership doesn't matter as much, but if you can get a slight edge, then you're going to put yourself in a good spot. I think that she gets takedowns here. I think she wins this fight by decision. She's one of the safer plays of the slate, in my opinion. And if you wanted to, you can grab Dwight Grant. If you think that the body snatcher is going to get a knockout here, I think that makes a lot of sense. Another way that you can approach cash is if you wanted to take Dwight Grant out, for example, you want to take Matt Schnell out because you weren't sold. You think that the footwork and the power of Sumudaerji gives him problems, then I don't blame you, because then I think you can grab somebody like Ricky Simone, who even in a loss is probably going to score a decent amount of points just because of the takedowns. And then you can either grab Jung, or you can come up here to Emily Ducote. I think that makes a lot of sense as well. I don't see Jessica Penne winning that fight. Those are probably the 2 ways that I would approach cash games this week. I can't post what they are on Twitter because I violate the terms and conditions of DraftKings, but this is probably what you want to do. Now for your tournaments, obviously you're not going to want to stack the main event. You're looking for 6 winners, and my preferred side, the main event, is Brian Ortega. I think he can score a whole lot of points this week. I think he's live for a finish as well. He's just got a super opportunistic clinch game and submission game. I think he could find the neck at some point. You're probably going to want Jung for the reasons that we talked about before. So now you have 8,400 in remaining salary per fighter, so I would try to go south of 8,000 to find some more value. This is where you're looking at Matt Schnell, Schnell, you're looking at Herbert Burns, you're looking at Jingliang. I'm going to plug him in there at 7,600. Now again, you want access to a high scoring ceiling, so I think that Shane Burgos makes a lot of sense. You can come down into this mid-range and try to grab somebody like Ducote, and then you've got 8,800 left over. You can go right back here to Misha Tate. If you're not sold on Ducote, then you can come down here to somebody like Ricky Simón. You've left 400 salary on the table. I think this is a good way for you to get different. And I think what makes you different is playing Misha Tate. I don't think a ton of people are going to be on her this week. Playing Ricky Simón, because I think the ownership with him and Jack Shore is probably going to be pretty close. And Jingliang, I just see him flying real under the radar this week. Now, if you wanted to come off of Misha Tate and you wanted to grab the body snatcher, I think that's a smart way to go because I think he's really live for a first round finish here. Or you can go up to Punahele Soriano if you wanted to. Now, if you wanted to keep Brian Ortega in there, you wanted to keep Shane Burgos in, another way that you can go about building this, if you wanted to grab different value plays, is somebody like Matt Schnell. You can grab Herbert Burns. If you wanted to go grab Jung, now you can afford anybody. And realistically, Amanda Lemos, if she wins by knockout, she's probably going to end up on the optimal lineup. She has scored really well in the past outside of her UFC debut. You've got 104, 91, 124, 128. What you're worried about is if she has a performance like she did against Angela Hill. But she's got 68 points there, and it's because the knockdown rate is absurd. So if you did grab Amanda Lemos and left 600 salary on the table, this is not a lineup that you're going to see a whole lot in your tournament. And obviously, if you weren't sold on this, then you have some salary to play with if you wanted to do some other things. Like, for example, if you weren't sold on Matt Schnell, you have 77 left over, you can come up here to Jingliang. Even with only 100 salary left on the table, this is still a very different lineup. And I really don't mind it because you have knockout upside and low ownership with Amanda Lemos. You've got finishing upside and grappling upside with Jung. You've got a very high ceiling with the Shane Burgos pick. You've got a huge grappling advantage with Herbert Burns, Jingliang, sneaky knockout upside, and then you have Brian Ortega. Now, if you wanted to try to attack the mid-range, let's say you really think that Jack Shore is going to do pretty well, you want to play Jack Shore this week, you want to play Brian Ortega this week, you might want to play Jung, you might want to play Ducote, you've got 8,500 left over. I really don't recommend playing Muslim Salikov, not just because I think that he's going to lose, but also if he wins, he probably doesn't score that many points. And now you have a situation with the way that the lineup is built right now, you wouldn't be able to play Dustin Jacoby, Jessica Penne, Ricky Simón, or Yair Rodriguez. So you probably find yourself playing Jingliang, or you can grab somebody like Herbert Burns. You've got 9,500 left over, you can come back up here and still grab Shane Burgos. Now I'll show you quickly what it would look like if you liked the other side of the main event. You like Yair Rodriguez down at 7,700. Well, this opens up a whole new world of possibilities for you because let's say you grab Jung, got 8,600 left over per fighter. You don't really need to play any more of the value plays. Let's say you liked Jack Shore at 8,400. Let's say you like Ducote at 8,200. You can grab Misha Tate. You can grab Shane Burgos. You can come off of Shane Burgos. You can grab Dwight Grant if you're trying to get a little different. But when you look at this kind of lineup, when you consider that Jung is now the favorite in this matchup, you have 5 favorites and a very live underdog on your hands in Yair Rodriguez. Now, if you wanted to try something really different and you come off of Ducote, you grab somebody like Matt Schnell, for example. Now with 1,200 left over, you can do some different things in your lineup. Like, for example, if you wanted to come up here to Amanda Lemos and Punahele Soriano. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's something you could do. Or you can grab Amanda Lemos and then you grab Shane Burgos, you left 500 salary on the table. At that point, you could even come off of Jack Shore and grab somebody like Misha Tate for a good matchup, or you can take that shot into Dwight Grant hoping that he finds a knockout. There are a few ways to approach this that make sense, and Yair Rodriguez makes all of it possible. So if you're building several lineups, what you're going to want to do is allocate some to Yair Rodriguez, allocate some to Brian Ortega, and then build your lineups around that. Unless you want to go with the third option, which is avoiding the main event altogether, because sometimes that pays off. Well, if you do that, let's see what it looks like. Well, if you start on the expensive end and you start to say, well, I really want to play Shane Burgos this week, I really want to play Misha Tate this week, I don't think she's going to lose. You really think that Jung isn't going to lose, you want to come down here and maybe take a shot at Matt Schnell. Now you've got 8,600 left over. You could grab somebody like Jack Shore. Personally, like you know, I prefer the other side in Ricky Simón. And then I think I'd get a little crazy and come up here to either Dwight Grant or I would spend the rest of the salary on Amanda Lemos. You can spend all your salary this way with confidence, knowing that not many people are going to avoid this main event. Now, as far as props go, I think Emily Ducote at plus 165 is really good. I think fight doesn't go the distance in the Burns Algeo fight at minus 165 is a nice spot. I think fight doesn't go the distance in the Dwight Dustin Stoltzfus fight at minus 140 is pretty nice. Misha Tate by decision at minus 110. Matt Schnell by submission at plus 800 is egregious. And then Jingliang by knockout at plus 330 I like. And then Brian Ortega by submission at plus 200. I think whenever Brian Ortega fights, you got to sprinkle the submission prop at that. Just to quickly go through the card for you, I've got Brian Ortega inside the distance, Amanda Lemos by decision, Jingliang by knockout, Matt Schnell by submission, Shane Burgos by decision, Misha Tate by decision, Punahele Soriano by knockout, Ricky Simone by decision, Herbert Burns by decision, Jung by decision, and then Dwight Grant inside the distance. If you have made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and go get your money back this week. Let's go!